The Story of the Arrogant Princess. Once upon a time, there was a kingdom ruled by a just king who had a beautiful daughter. Despite her beauty, the princess was arrogant and had bad manners. The king wanted to marry her off, hoping she would change for the better, but she treated all the princes who came to propose with disrespect. The king announced, "My friends, kings and princes, you will meet my daughter now." The princess began to look for a prince to marry, but she mocked each one she met. She would say, "This one is too short, this one is so fat he looks like a ball, and that one is as tall as a flagpole, while this one is as short as a dwarf." The princess ridiculed all the kings, princes, and nobles and laughed at them, despite her father's growing anger. However, he remained silent until she insulted a noble king with a beard, saying, "Look at him! His beard looks like an ugly broom." The king was furious and shouted, "What has come over you? How dare you insult these noblemen? I declare that you will marry the first person who walks through the door, whether he is a prince or a beggar." 2 days later, the king's wish came true. A musician playing his flute passed through the palace garden, seeking charity. The king, noticing him, ordered the guards to bring the musician to him. He carried out his decision and commanded the princess to marry the musician. The musician was shocked but happy, while the princess cried and protested. The king ignored her pleas and insisted on the marriage. The king then commanded the couple sternly, "Prepare to leave. You will not stay here. You will travel with your husband." Thus the musician and his new wife left the palace and ventured into the unknown. After a few days, they reached a beautiful forest. The princess asked, "Who owns this lovely forest?" The musician replied, "It belongs to the king with the ugly beard." The princess sighed, "Oh, how foolish I have been." They continued their journey and arrived at wide meadows. The princess asked, "Who owns these vast meadows?" The musician again replied, "They belong to the king with the ugly beard." The princess sighed once more, "Oh, how foolish I have been." Then they reached a large city. The princess asked, "Who owns this beautiful city?" The musician replied, "The king with the ugly beard." The princess lamented, "Oh, how foolish I have been! If only I hadn't rejected him." The musician asked, "Why are you saying this? Am I not a good husband for you?" The princess remained silent. The musician then led her to a small hut on the outskirts of the city. The princess was terrified and said, "What is this house? It is so small. Where are the servants?" The musician replied, "Servants? My dear, we must do everything ourselves. There are no servants here." Food was scarce in the hut, and it ran out quickly. The princess struggled to learn how to cook, something she was unaccustomed to, but the musician helped her. One day, the musician cut some willow branches and asked her to make baskets. She tried, but injured her fingers. The musician grew frustrated and shouted, "You can't cook or make baskets. What good are you? I'll find something else for you to do." The poor musician made some clay pots and set up a stall for his wife to sell them. Because of her beauty, people bought the pots, and sales continued for days. One day, she set up her stall by the roadside, but a soldier on horseback came by and shattered all her wares. The princess was devastated and cried, "What will I do? What will my husband say?" She rushed home to tell her husband. He scolded her, "How foolish are you to place your shop in a busy street? You're not suitable for this work. I went to the palace and secured you a job there. You will now work as a maid in the kitchen." The princess began doing all the cleaning work, scrubbing floors, fireplaces, ovens, pots, and pans. At the end of each day, she would carry some meat home. This went on for a while until one day she heard about the wedding announcement of the king's eldest son. She saw everyone rejoicing, but she felt sad and quiet. The day of the wedding arrived, and the preparations were complete. The princess stood by the window, watching the crowd, and said, "If only I had not been so arrogant, I would have accepted the king with the ugly beard. I regret everything." Then a voice behind her said, "Did you mention my name?" The princess turned and saw the king with the ugly beard. She said, "My lord, I am sorry. It hurts me to see you like this." The king smiled and said, "Do not worry. You are not alone. Come with me." He took her to the grand hall where all the nobles, including her father, were gathered. Everyone laughed at her state, and she felt deep shame. She said, "I am sorry for being rude to you all. I have learned my lesson." The king with the ugly beard replied, "Do not worry, my princess. I am your husband, the musician you lived with, and also the soldier who broke your pots. I did all of this so you would learn that arrogance is a great evil and the worst trait a person can have. You have changed, and your pride is gone. Now, my queen, take my hand and marry me." They were married at that moment and lived happily ever after.